So it's about 8 o'clock in the morning, and now I decided to talk about privacy, trauma, and how it blends to burnout. So the thing is, my list of traumas is so long. It would take me years to go all those in details, but it's not only about the details. It's about the type of abuse that you've been subjected to your whole life. In my case, as a child, I was emotionally, verbally, physically, sexually abused by my parents and members of the extended family and members of the church I used to go to, and by my colleagues, people at school, people I used to call friends, I consider friends. And the physical and emotional abuse was the verbal abuse and the control that my mother had over me was surreal. When I think about it, I just can't think of a human being or a mother being capable of doing those things to their own child. But I was basically the patsy. Her life was not what she thought it would be when she got married at 16. So by 25-ish, she already had 3 kids, very unreliable source of income, living in poverty, small houses, basements, and all sorts of small spaces, and the lack of privacy to, have your own space to process all that played a huge part in my life. So there was the beating, there was the name calling, there was the humiliating and just constantly. It was constant. It was every single day. Pushing my boundaries, don't enter my room without knocking. It's a rule that my family doesn't even know how to process in their minds. And I mean everybody. From my mother to my father to my sister to my brother, everybody just storms into your space without question. Just especially my father, he just opens the door no matter what. When I came back from Italy when I was 25, I was taking mat Pilates lessons in Milan, and I loved it. It toned my body, and I was happy to keep doing it back at home. So I closed the door. There's no keys, because if we had keys on our doors, our brother would come, take the keys, all of them, and lock himself inside the room, his room. So it would be impossible to get them to open it up. Hence, there is no keys allowed in our bedrooms. So this time I was in my underwear, and I was doing mat Pilates lessons on my room, which was tight, really small. And this was after decades of sharing bedrooms with my sister, which means we had to change clothes 50 centimeters from one another, or in the bathroom, which meant we couldn't just sit down or lay down and sleep because the other one had things to do. And it was just, it meant sometimes that we didn't have a wardrobe to put our stuff. I remember a couple of 15, 16 years ago, I used to have a card box to put my stuff in, because that's all the room could fit. And anyway, it was about 20 years ago. I was a teenager. I didn't understand the concept of what was going on at the moment. But today I do. And I didn't understand that. I understood that I didn't have any privacy. So much so that I used to put, there was a cassette player that it was really old, and the thing is, it was my bubble, that place, my room, my bed was my whole world. I could lay down and read thousands of books like I did, and listen to soap operas on the radio, because we weren't allowed to have TVs by the church. So I used to be the one who would make up, mixtapes from this cassette player, and that was my gate outside that world. And you know how I did it. I used to play sick, so I wouldn't go to church, and then I'll have the whole house for myself. When I found out that I could, do that, sorry Jesus, but that's the truth. But not going to church, I had the whole house for myself. I used to dance. I remember listening to Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, Maroon 5. I used to know, I think it's Songs of Jane for Jane, I don't know, all the lyrics. And that's when I had some privacy to be myself, to let it out, my energy and my identity, which did not fit the status quo that my family preaches still so hard and so fiercely. They truly believe that shit. Anyway, lack of privacy is so important that when we were living in this basement and I only had this card box to put my stuff in, we also had a bathroom inside the living space and one outside, so which took less than 20 steps to get. It was bigger, it was ventilated, it was a lot more clean. It was cleaner. So neighbor coming. So what happened was, we used to listen, me and my sister, we used to wake up, and this is a recurrent theme for us, because we had to listen to my mother and my father having sex. We used to listen to my father and my brother getting up in the middle of the night and peeing on the water. And the sound of water, heating water, is one of my misophonia major triggers. I go insane. I go totally nuts if I listen to water go on water. Don't ask me. Just go with it. Also, my brothers used to have, some people call it autonomy. I don't know how, I don't remember. I just remember he had his nose stuck up with something, and his chewing noises were horrifying. because he couldn't breathe as he would chew and swallow food. And we were, it was mandatory, we were obliged, we had to sit down and watch that every single day. So as soon as I grew up, I took my plate and I went to the bedroom. Sometimes to the bathroom, just so I could eat in peace. And honestly, this is bringing back so many bad memories. But I need to talk about what lack of privacy does to you. It becomes a trauma trigger because your boundaries are constantly being violated. Constantly. I remember that my mother used to have to find it hilarious when my brother used to wakes us up. Me, obviously, not my sister. She's the textbook perfect daughter, so she didn't get any of this. She didn't get beaten nowhere near as much as I did. She didn't suffer any physical or sexual abuse. She didn't get 90.9% of what I have been through in the same environment, growing up in the same environment. So what happened was my mother used to think it was hilarious to tell my brother to wake us up. And when she did that, it meant that he would throw a flip-flop in my head. So that's how I used to wake up. And my bed was next to a window. And I loved the fact that I had a window. But it also meant that we didn't have a door. And when we had a door in our bedrooms throughout, we moved so much around. I'm talking about years, decades of moving around. Cities. In one of these cities, I lived for about 8 years, and we lived in basically all the neighborhoods because as soon as the landlord raised up the rent price, we would search for a smaller and a cheaper one. And the rooms would become even more smaller, and there was no doors, and there was no ceiling, how do they call that? It was just tile. There was no soundproof anything. It was just like tile and half walls, not full walls. It just, trust me, you don't want to live in one of those. If you have, congratulations, you are a son of a bitch. Strong son of a bitch, and you survived. Congratulations. So, why I'm telling you all this, why I'm putting myself through this all over again. Last time my father kicked me, actually he didn't kick me, he beat me, was because I was cooking. And I think this is one of the main reasons why I hate cooking. If not the main one. This experience took away my love for cooking and baking. I used to make fucking Argentinians alfajors. I used to make apple pies. And it's just like, I made the best lasagna of my whole life. While in Italy, I used to cook a lot, bake a lot. And after I came back, I was making hot dogs. And my father always, he's so creepy, so such a filthy bastard. And I mean it. I don't know if I finished my reasoning. I just want to say that when I was doing mat Pilates in my room, he opened the door and he just stared at me in my underwear. because the door was open. I said we didn't have any keys. So that's one of the reasons why I'm bringing him back right now, because he's a creep. So I was cooking. I was 28 at this point. It's gonna be 10 years this year, and was the last I have been physically abused. He had this nasty habit of putting his hands. He didn't wash them. He just put his hands inside the pans, and took whatever was inside and put it in his mouth and eat it. And I was sick and tired of that. Obviously, I was almost 30 at that point. And I said to him, don't touch it. Don't put your filthy fingers inside of my hot dog, my sausage. And he felt offended. So he took the boiling water he was cooking in, and threw it on the floor. He was so mad. He was so enraged. He was so fucking... He lost it. Because I used to tell him that all the time. Fucking knock on my door before you enter. And do not put your filthy hands on the food. Why don't you fucking grab a spoon or something? Why does he have to be... does he have to be your finger? Or your whole hand? What kind of stupid ass does that kind of thing? I mean, what kind of brain, cognitive, sense? I'm not going to try to understand that shit. He's fucked up. So, basically, he was the last stop for him. And I was not really scared. Because at that point, I thought that by setting boundaries, I deserved the outcome. So I knew he was going to beat me. He came back, but the water spilled on my legs. It burned my legs. It was not like third-degree burns, but it touched my legs. So he came back and he punched me in my back, several times. And I remember feeling pleasure because I knew it was coming. And I remember that, I did the wrong thing. I told him not to do one thing that bothers me. He crossed it. I voiced it out loud. And I deserved it. So, as he was punching me, I remember smiling. I was smiling because I knew, this is what you get for telling your truth, trying to set up boundaries. And the thing is, why does it have to do with privacy? Because it has everything to do with privacy. Because today, I woke up and it was noon. It was not noon, sorry. It was midnight. I went to bed at 8:30 and I woke up at midnight. So about 1:30, I managed to fall asleep again. And for the next 3 hours, I had the most horrific nightmare I've ever had in my whole life. I had a nightmare about my mother and my sister invading my apartment, the one that I live right now, and taking my stuff. And I remember screaming, get out of here. And I remember telling them, you know that you're not supposed to be here, because I legally notify them to not come here. So after hours of... My bed was a mess, covers all over the place. And my cat Benny was with me. When I woke up at 6, he was on the floor, on the carpet, because I was moving so much around throughout the night. And I realized that the blend of burnout with trauma, the combination of abuse and zero privacy creates a devastating burnout cycle through several mechanisms. And this systematic erosion, leaves us victims emotionally depleted and chronically defeated. If you don't have a safe, private space to decompress, the mind and the body are never allowed to reset. And one of the things is hypervigilance, constant hypervigilance. So when your privacy is constantly invaded and your personal boundaries are crossed, or your space is constantly monitored. And in my case, when I was a teen, about 11, I was in my grandma's and grandpa's house. And by that time, my uncle, one of my aunties, was still single. She was my hero. She was my absolute hero. She was the first in the family to go to college. And when she graduated, she was still single, which for us, from the church, means you're fucking old. Hello, you need to do something about it. She was desperate. But she had standards. And that was a first for me. And she wanted a guy who wasn't a loser, like the husbands of her sisters' husbands. And what she got instead was an alcoholic, because she was so desperate to get married. He's been costing her thousands and thousands of money, because he's been admitted to mental hospitals ever since they got married, like 2 or 3 times or more. I don't remember. I don't care. But anyway, at that point, she was single. She would travel around with her friends. She had a lot of friends, which in her 30s, which for me right now is just fucking amazing, brilliant. How did she manage to do that? I don't know. But the truth is, she introduced me to reading. She graduated in pedagogy. And this is in the early 90s. And I used to take her books with me to read. And I would read them in like a couple of hours. And then grab the next one. And then the next one. And then I used to read them only when I was in vacation in my grandparents' house. Then I started bringing them home. And also, I would, sneak a couple of cents from my mom's and buy them. But they had the cover ripped, so they will become cheaper. They would rip the cover and sell them for 50 cents. I'm not gonna say what currency. But I could afford them. I could afford actually 1 or 2 or 3 at a time. Sometimes I would just read them and say I didn't like it, so I'm not gonna buy it. And on this system, I read about, I don't know, by the time I was 19, I had read over 500-600 of them. It was Harlequin books, when Harlequin books meant something. Not a joke as they are today. But, Diana Palmer, Nora Roberts, when she was still sane. Anyway, I had my books checked for immoral, inconducive words with the church. So my mother became increasingly over vigilant of my books. And that's why I got so attached to the library. The library was my safe haven, absolutely. It was the one place that I could sit down and read the fucking book without nobody pissing me off. It was my safe haven. And I was also, at the age of 12, the first person to ever get to take a book from the library, the municipal library, home and sign up and bring them back the next day. 12 years old, I was already a pioneer and fucking, demanding my rights. It's a public library. You cannot keep these books for yourself. I will read them because I would stay so long that they have to kick me out. And I say I didn't finish the book yet. He said it doesn't matter. And I would say I need to take them home. He said no. It was a young guy. You can't. And then I was pestering him so much that one day he let me take the books home. And because I brought them back a couple of days later, or the next day, I don't remember, he trusted me. And he started trusting other people too. So, yeah, I was the fucking reason at 12 of why people could take books home in one certain city, in one certain country. Yep. And when I wasn't in the library, my sister would say to my mother, Milka is reading such and such book. It's in her cabinet. And my mother would take it, see if there was anything inappropriate. It usually had, but the one that she lost it said, I'm not gonna die a virgin. She ripped the fucking book apart. She got a red pen, and she wrote in like huge font letters like, I hate this, exclamation mark. And that was my life in a nutshell. And the result is that my nervous system remained locked in a high alert survival mode. And the continued release of stress hormones, like cortisol, eventually leads to severe physical and cognitive exhaustion, commonly known as brain fog. Just the other day, 2 days ago, I had such a brain fog, heavy one, that I couldn't really think clearly. And although these days is not so often, it doesn't come so often, sometimes it does. And it's awful because it seems like your brain is it doesn't work. You can't make this. This is a horrible time to make decisions. And by the way, do not make any decisions before breakfast. Do not. And commercial times, it's not really the best idea. And also the exhaustion of masking, because in abusive in highly invasive environments like I have enormously, extensively talked about, you're frequently forced to hide your true feelings, censor your thoughts, and perform constantly in a way that minimizes conflict or abuses scrutiny. So that's what I've been doing my whole fucking life. I've been pretending to be someone that they would approve of, they would like. It never worked. It never worked because the camouflaging requires immense emotional labor. At one point, you're gonna get sick of it, like I did at 30. And without a private space or time to drop the mask and process emotions authentically, the brain is continually drained of its energy. So I was sick and tired of all that. The abuse, the church people, the family expectations, the condescendence. Oh my God, do not answer for me. Did not be condescending towards me. Accuse me. And the systematic erosion of boundaries. It's just the lack of privacy makes those boundaries nearly impossible to enforce. So what happened to us? Hi, Benny. Mama. Hi, Mama. Ciao. It's Benny, my cat. He's back from his morning stroll. The result is that the criticism, the expectations, the continuously monitoring, it just drain my time and my energy, and the take on emotional burdens that aren't yours to carry. So I was carrying the burden of my brother. I was carrying the burden of my mother's and father's failed marriage. I was carrying the burden of having a sister that was perfect, that had achieved stability at the age of 30, 25, 26. I'm 1 year and 5 months older than she is, and I haven't got that. And I'm almost 40. Anyway, eventually the boundary collapse happened, and it led to a complete defeat and a profound sense of helplessness, which is a core feature of burnout. There you go. The continuous traumatic stress, and unlike standard stress that ends when a project is completed or a workday is over, abuse and privacy invasion represent ongoing, unpredictable threats. So, we victims, we can experience long-term continuous traumatic stress. And the psychological toll of never having a safer harbor strips away a person's identity and sense of personal accomplishment, pushing me or us deeper into chronic burnout. So my nightmare today, this evening, was not random. Was not a thing that I would wish to my worst enemy. I truly wouldn't. It's I think moving forward is understanding how these factors intertwine, which is a critical step in the invisible scars of emotional abuse, and how survivors experience severe chronic burnout after abuse and lack of privacy to, process all that. I didn't have any privacy whatsoever. After all those things, I will leave you with this picture in your head. I was about 15, 16, when I was hanging out at a church lady spot. She had a food trailer, and the youngsters from the church would gather on Mondays, which is unusual for a market fair. On Mondays, we would gather there just to hang out and talk about stuff. I wouldn't even buy a hot dog because I didn't have any money. And she had this, street food truck, food trailer, and one day, my mother said, be back at 5. I said, okay. But the conversation was going towards a guy that I was a young guy, interested in. And he was the last one. And we didn't want to leave because the conversation was so nice. And the flirting was the first time I was starting to flirt with someone, and I wasn't allowed to date, like I said before. So basically, what happened was I lost track of time. I didn't have a watch. I didn't have a cell phone until I was 24, yes. And it was a Samsung. I didn't have any camera or anything. So she came fuming down the hill, and I could see in her face she wasn't really happy, but I did not expect for the life of me what she did next. She slapped me in both my sides of my face in the middle of the street. She called me whore, told me to go home and wait for her. I felt like I was being sexually violated by my own mother. It was just physical and emotional and I forgot the name is psychological. But I thought she was going to rape me, and what I think is that she did in a way, because she said, wait for me, go home and wait for me. I remember putting some music on. At some point we had a cassette. At another point, my father decided it was a good idea to have vinyl in the 90s. So I put some music on the radio, and I sat on the bed, and I waited for her for I don't know how long. I just knew she was going to beat the shit out of me. I just didn't know how. The tools changed over time. Either was the belt wasn't working, or the flip-flops weren't working. So they changed to hose, not garden hose, like gas hose, thick, hard ones. And then it was sticks, wood sticks, and then this time was kind of different. She grabbed the iron cord, which has one line in the middle. And she made a point of striking my legs, both my legs. I put my legs one next to the other. And she would strike one stripe at a time until both my legs were covered with marks of the cord, the iron cord. And the whole time I didn't cry. I didn't, because I thought I deserved that, because I was a bad daughter, and because I didn't deserve that, to have a good time. So the fact that I had a nightmare with her storming inside my apartment, it's no small thing. It's severe chronic burnout after abuse. Just not our work, but at your own home, by your own parents. Your body crashes when you're transitioning out of survival mode. And that's where I am right now. I'm transitioning out of survival mode. And my brain decided today was a good day to make me remember all of these things. Just because somehow, somewhere, someone's gonna listen to this. And they're gonna know that they're not alone. You're not the only one. This one's one of the deepest truths that I believed in. It was that I was alone. You're not. There's always somebody with you. Doesn't matter if it's a cat or your dog. I don't say humans because humans let you down. Eventually. It's not their fault. It's by default. It's expectable. You have to expect that at some point, everybody in your life will let you down somehow. So yes, I do have a good reason to keep my family away from me. They are dangerous. Not just because they beat me and sexually abused me and physically abused me and failed in providing for me a decent household, but also because they can make it like in my nightmare. They can storm in and take me somewhere I don't want to be. And also, they can make you look like you're the insane one. Talking about narcissists. People talked about so much about narcissists in 2025. I got disgusted by the word. But the truth is, there are people who are dangerous for you. And you need to be aware of them. And you need to protect yourself. If you're exhausted, if you feel emotional numbness, if you feel brain fog, look for a psychiatrist. Like I said, I don't trust therapists or psychologists. But look for a psychiatrist. I'm not a doctor. I don't give medical advice. This is for information only. So, if you need more specific targeted coping and recovery strategies tailored to your situation, obviously you do, please seek medical help.